Welcome to Beyond Bacalhau, Cracking the Portuguese Business Code by Raquel Batista. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the 7th episode of my podcast, Beyond Bacalhau, Cracking the Portuguese Business Code. Now, this is a very special episode for me because it's been a long time coming, and this is something that I talk about with a lot of people. As you know, my 90% of my clients are expats or foreigners, and this is one of the most important topics that we can talk about. That is the cultural aspects of doing business in Portugal. So all my clients come from different countries, different cultures, different ways of doing things. And one of the things that people notice the most when they get to Portugal is the cultural shock. Now, one of those cultural shocks is the speed of life, and the speed at which we do things here in Portugal. And although at first that's maybe a bit of an obstacle to overcome, I have never heard any client tell me, I've had it with this and I'm going home. So, quite the contrary, people benefit from the decrease in speed of life in general. So, people tend to appreciate time more, people tend to appreciate meals more, go out grocery shopping, be with families, experience outside, walk outside, do sports outside, and profit on everything that this beautiful country has to offer. And so, even though at first there may be a bit of a clash and a bit of resistance and frustration with people that have been used to and accustomed to a different speed at which everything is done, I know that that is also one of the things that they end up liking the most and enjoying the most. And then after a few months, they come to me and say, hey, now I think I am living my life properly. So now I am out of the rat race. I can enjoy my life. I have nearly a stress-free life. I can be with my kids, with my family. I can enjoy where I am and take walks and all of that. So the first thing that I wanted to say is take your time and don't be scared right away because you will get used to it. Okay. So, this episode is all about the cultural differences of making business in Portugal. And one of the things that is kind of curious about the Portuguese way is that we really don't like to talk about money, and we really have a hard time naming prices. And I am talking from personal experience. Okay, now I am much better because I'm like, no, I'm naming my price. It's this. The person either accepts it or they don't. But this is my price, and it's there so that the people are very aware of it, and it's transparent and it's there. But the truth is, Portuguese people do have the hardest time talking about money. If you have local relationships and Portuguese friends, they will not brag about having anything. So, quite the contrary, they will downplay anything that they may have. So, it's not at all like a flashy culture of, if my neighbor has something, I will top that and show off with something even better. Portuguese people are quite reserved in that matter. They don't want people knowing how much money they have. Part of the Catholic education that 80% of the population has is the fact that we need to feel guilty for having success or guilty for having money. So it's not good to brag. It's not good to boast. So you never want the other person to feel like less than you. And so, generally speaking, no Portuguese will brag about anything. And I know this is like complete opposites from other countries where it's all like, this is what I have a lot of this. And sometimes they don't have anything, but they just show off and they just fake it. And you think they have a lot of money when they don't. So in Portugal is the other way around. So people may have a lot of money, and especially with old money, people with old money do not give that much importance to brands. In fact, it's a curious thing about brands and high priced brands. If you see the medium priced products that they have the flashy brand logos all around it. And why? Because the medium priced products are going to be bought by the people that want to brag about that. But they, of course, cannot afford the best things. They can't afford a price, a Uber price. And so that's the market for that logo where it's showing off the brand. Here, this is what I have. If you go to one of those stores and you see the higher priced, the higher ticket clothes, they don't have anything showing off what the brand is. They're actually quite low profile. They're not flashy colors at all, black, white, cream, gray, stuff like that. And it's very subtle where you know that the brand is. So either just the name on the side, or even just on the back. So very, very subtle. And because these people, they don't need to flash anything, they already have it, and so they don't pay any attention to flashing any brands. They know they have the money, they know they can afford. And so it's very funny to know that the top brands of clothes and luxury accessories and stuff do know this, and so they price these two different kinds of items for two different segments. So Portuguese have a really hard time talking about prices. And so what will happen a lot of times is that is the last thing that they will talk about. Okay. If they're explaining a service, they'll tick every box, they'll explain thoroughly what the service is. And then right at the end, like if they cannot escape that, they will give you the price, and they will almost uh, say they're sorry for giving you the price. So they're almost like, I'm sorry that I have to name a price. I'm sorry that I can't give this away for free because I think I should, but here is my price. And, they're always very mindful of not being considered too over ambitious. And so they're quite low profile when it comes to pricing. Okay. So one of the first things that happened to me in my business was with American clients. They were like, before they even asked anything, they were like, "What's the price?" And I was like, "I mean, wait, what's the service? What's the circumstances?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, but okay, so what's the price per hour?" And I was like, okay, "I have to think about it. Depends." And at first, the first thing that happened to me and that kind of shocked me, so the other way around, was when an American client came to me, and the first thing that she asked was, "What's your price?" And I was like taken aback and I don't know, but do I need to give it right away? And she was like, yeah. And then I gave like a price per hour, and she was like, really, just that? And I was thinking that I was like overcharging as hell. So it's, the levels are different, and of course the money power and the ability to do anything with the average salary that we have in Portugal is very different than things that expats can do. And so this is one of the shocks. The second one that always appears and gets spoken about is the level of service. And this is, I have to say, why a lot of times people ask me if I'm Portuguese. Well, for two reasons. First of all, because I really don't have any accent when I talk English, when I speak in English. And the other thing is that my level of service is compared to what they were used to, because I answer emails right away, I answer calls, I'm responsive. I don't have any unanswered mails for over 24 hours. Even if I go on vacation, I have backup plans. I plan my work, and this is something that it's just my nature. It's been in my nature all my life. That's probably one of the reasons why I got so high up in the corporate ladder, is because I always thought that I had to do more and more and more to prove myself. And I always wanted to be the one to stand out and to be, the example of the prime employee. And so a lot of times that meant that I was working 3 times as hard as anyone else. I remember one time we had KPIs, of course, and my numbers were like 3 times the average number of everybody else. And I remember at the time my husband just turned to me and said, "Do you realize that even if you cut down to half, you're still way ahead of everybody else? So why are you killing yourself and doing all of those extra hours? Even if you do half of what you're doing right now, you're still going to be doing a lot more than they are." And so I acknowledge that my level of service is not quite common and quite typical in the Portuguese setting. And that is probably why I have so many referrals, and that I don't do any marketing at all, and that I have 90% of my clients as referrals, because this is something that they don't have to struggle with for once. I mean, if they need anything in Portugal, utilities, whatever, insurances, whatever you need, they know that they're going to have to test their patient, and they're going to have to be patient and wait it out, and everything will be sorted in the end, but it's not going to be a quick process. So I think that with me, this was one of the first things that made me stand out. But the fact is, the standard level of service with most companies is not good. And I speak, of course, from personal experience, because I'm Portuguese, I live here. And so I know how a customer gets treated sometimes. And even for the slightest thing, I mean, even having a good schedule to answer calls from client support, a lot of companies have such a narrow window of customer support that, if anyone works, when you're working, you're not going to call, because you have a problem in your washer or dryer or whatever it is. You're going to need to make that call after you're done working. A lot of times, by that time, the customer service is already closed, so you can't even talk to them. Then sometimes it's the fact that you go round and round in that call, and dial 3 and dial 4, and then around and around and around and you go, and you can't talk to anyone. And so uh, another thing that you may notice is, if you mail any company, it's very seldom that you receive an answer, let alone an automated answer. But it's very not typical at all if you email a company for anything, or a restaurant or whatever it is, and they get back to you like in the same day or 24 hours later. Sometimes there's never an answer. And so that's a channel of communication that, although it does exist, it's not really functioning. So get used to that and wait it out. Don't panic. It will all work out. And it's a way to train your patience. Okay. You're welcome. So, one of the other things that I wanted to talk about is the level of trust that we have with clients. So, the way the Portuguese do business is anchored in a relationship based model. Okay. We need to know our client. We need to have to take a look, to look our client in the eye. We need to have some kind of rapport, some kind of relationship with our clients. whatever the type of business. I mean, I know that my husband in the construction company, this happens with suppliers. When they know each other, they trust each other, it's a whole different ball game. The phone gets answered, things get done, and it's completely different. When you get the trust of the people, everything gets done. And so trust and relationship is a very, very important element to business relations in Portugal. I noticed this also myself because I have almost like a hard time distancing myself from clients. So when I have, for instance, and my services are usually, it's not just, it's not a 5 minute thing. It involves time. It's complex things. So it's bound to have a duration that allows us to develop that relationship. And by the end of it, those people are not clients anymore. I mean, they're clients slash friends. And you'll probably see this like on my socials where I have clients interacting with me, or when I get gifts from my clients, or they take me out to have dinner, or they offer me chocolates or whatever. And I have that contest of, who's the client that's going to offer me the best gift. So it's counting, guys. But it is true that it is a very relationship based model. So if you're going to do business in Portugal, you have to take out that ice mask and get down to earth and get closer to people and work at the relationship model that you have. So you can't be standoffish. You can't look like you're just got here and you're like, um, you don't take people seriously, or you're doubting someone. That's going to put off the Portuguese business person. Okay. Another good aspect of this is the informality of business sometimes. So, and I mean, think of the difference between uh, 30-page long contracts that you have in the US and UK. And I've seen a lot of them in my banking career. I mean, thousands, hundreds of pages long, because usually they're like, the jurisdictional law will be English because it's almost like a typical law for all contracts at an international level. But it's like a contract of biblical sizes, even for the tiniest thing. You'll see in Portugal that it's actually the other way around. So we are not formal people at all. We don't write contracts for everything and anything. We write contracts for when the law requires that you have a written contract. And there's not a lot of those. So when you buy a house, for instance, you do need to have a written contract. There's another instances where, of course, you need a written contract. But in a lot of business transactions, it's on word alone, on your word, on your honor, on the fact that you know that person, and you don't require any contract at all. So don't worry if you're like expecting to be thrown a contract for a service, because the probability is there will be no contract, and the relationship will be based on word, integrity, honesty alone, honor, and that's it. So a lot of deals are made with a shake of hands. This is also a big uh, issue when it comes to networking. So because the business model is so based in relationship, the networking that you do is fundamentally important. The people that you know are fundamentally important. The referrals that you may do are fundamentally important, because then you have an implicit trust. Okay, you almost like overcome the first step automatically with that. And I know that happens to me when actually a couple of clients asked me that yesterday. Was like, how do you trust your clients? Well, it's easy if those people come from referrals, because there's mutual trust. So I know that a former client of mine has filtered these people and knows these people that they're giving to me. And the new client or the soon to be client also has an implicit trust because they have references that this person has worked well in the past. And so I'm very lucky in that sense that over 95% of my clients come from referrals, and so I don't have this issue. But if it weren't for this, I would really have a hard time getting to business right away without knowing and without having any kinds of references when it comes to clients. So that is very important. Another topic that is related to this one is the fact that Portuguese avoid confrontation at all costs. And you'll see this in Portugal because there's hardly any protests at all. They're very unusual. Even when things get a little bit complicated, it's very rare to see these kinds of public displays of anger or protest or whatever. So, and this can actually be something that is very detrimental to Portuguese people because we're more of the sort, deixa ver, deixa andar, which means like, let it go. Let's see. Let's let it play out. Let's go with the flow and we'll see what happens. And a lot of times that's good because a lot of problems are self solving. So just by the passing of times, there's others that may grow with time if you don't handle them. And so, and this was very in your face when COVID came and the mask mandate and the vaccine mandate and all of that. If you'll see the compliance levels of Portugal, they're like nearly 100%. So where other countries were at 20% and having, protests and anti-vaccine clubs and Facebook groups and whatever. So a rise in people against everything. In Portugal, we have a very compliant nature. Okay, we have to wear the mask. Okay, let's wear the mask. We have to get the vaccine. Okay, let's get the vaccine. I'm not saying, of course, there's not exceptions to this rule, but if you see the numbers, this is what it shows. So Portuguese are kind of a low stress people when it comes to things like that and things that we don't agree with. You'll see that politically because even when things get really hard, there's no complete break with the previous system. And of course, we've seen recently the rise of a more extreme right wing party. But that was actually the first time that I saw the political, let's say, forces get divided in three rather than two, like left and right centrists, let's say. So we are a very laid back culture. We tend to not be confrontational at all. And so in a business meeting, if you go out with all the guns blazing, everybody's going to be like, no, I'm not going to do business with you because it's like, what is wrong? I mean, why is this person angry at me and yelling at me? Actually, I remember one time, I have to say that I'm privileged that I very seldom had meetings where, it got heated in any way. So everybody's an adult and over 20 years of career working in high finance and thousands upon thousands of meetings. And I remember only this one incident actually. So as you can see, no matter how heated things were or how complicated or how opposite the discussion was, everybody was still adult. And at the end of the day, we know that this is work and people can like nail you and go hard on you and have an argument with you, but at the end of that is done and there's no resentment. Okay, this was a professional argument. There's no resentment. It's fine. I don't think that you're a bad person just because you don't see things the way I see them. So we tend to separate that a lot. But I digress, of course. I was remembering that one time where I had a heated discussion, and I didn't even get to have that heated discussion because that was so ridiculous that the guy, like himself, heated up the discussion himself, got so fired up that he actually ended up walking, storming out of the meeting. I didn't even get the chance to say anything. I had like two colleagues with me, and he was Portuguese, okay? So it's not anything contrary to, Portuguese versus expat. No, this was like quite an exception to the rule. And I remember be sitting and looking at this person, and he was talking, and I started not hearing what he was saying and just looking at him and thinking, why is he getting so angry and so upset? This is work. Why is he getting all fired up? Because we really do separate work. Work is work. Work has its importance, but it's not my personal life. Okay. This is something else. And I remember the guy stormed out, and I looked at my colleagues like, what happened here? And they were like, I don't know. And we really didn't know what to do at that time. So the guy stormed off. Eventually, we realized he wasn't going to come in because he had colleagues the other side of the table, and those were in an even worse position than we were. Okay. Because I think we all ended up laughing at the situation. And the guy that stormed out was the clown in the end, because even his own colleagues were like, this was a bit overkill. He was a little bit off today. And so that is something that will not happen, is having a confrontational attitude. It's based on relationship, it's based on trust, it's based a lot of times on kindness, on consideration for the other person. And so if you come out with your guns blazing, it's not going to be that well accepted. I just want to mention two other issues, or two other points that I think are very relevant when we talk about the Portuguese culture. And one of them, and it's probably related to the fact that we have a hard time talking about money, as I've said, is it's almost unthinkable for us to have a business go bankrupt, okay? Because there are businesses over 200 and 300 years old. So for us, a business, it's almost a generational kind of thing. We don't usually create companies like that. It's not that model of create a company, grow it, sell it. That very seldom happens here. And I'm a business broker, so I know that this is not common. I mean, you sell restaurants, that happens a lot. There's a lot of três passos, as that's what it's called, but there's really not the culture of, I am going to create this company, I'm going to make it grow, and then I'm going to sell it for a bunch of money, and they will continue with the company. No, that is not the case here. The company is usually very much related, and again, because this is a relationship model, it's very tied to your own name, to your own honor, to your own personality. So if that business goes south, we have really a real hard time facing it. And so we will do just about anything and everything to prevent any kind of bankruptcy. And if it does happen, it is something that is going to scar that Portuguese person for life. So it's not something that we take lightly at all. So it's almost like you disgraced your family. Of course, I'm kidding and I'm exaggerating, but not that much. So, like, opposite with other cultures where it's like, oh, okay, this business didn't turn out. That's fine. We'll shut down this one and build another one, next year or the following month or the following week. That's fine. this didn't work out, but mistakes happen, lesson learned, and I'll move on to the next one. No, it's very hard for Portuguese to assume a failure in that regard because, again, it's a name, it's an honor, it's a personal thing that we have when we have a company. Our client trust us, our suppliers trust us. And so, if anything goes south, it is very, very hard on any Portuguese. Okay, so it's not, oh, okay, touch and go. This, let's go bankrupt on this, 5 minutes from now, I'll make another one. No. And this leads me to the second relationship related thing with this, which is we usually create companies for generational wealth, let's say. So you have thousands and thousands of family businesses. So it's very common to have someone that has a business, and if that business succeed, they will pass it on to their kids. I don't know if the kids will look after that well or not, but that will happen, and that's something that we consider that it's almost like giving them a foot up in life, giving them opportunities that we didn't have, putting them way, way ahead in the race than what we were and than what everybody else is. So go have a walk downtown Lisbon and you'll see a lot of stores saying lojas com história, so stores with history, because they're over 200 years old businesses. I think the oldest business existent in Portugal was created in the 1500s, and it's the postal service. But then you have a lot of other businesses, very well-known businesses, Vista Alegre. You have a pastry shop, a very well-known pastry shop downtown. You have a lot of age-old businesses that are passed down to generations, and this is the way that we think about business. It's not create, grow, sell. It's create, grow, pass it on. And that's why business get to be this old, because they get taken care of by the other members of the family, by the sons, by the grandsons, and all of that. I think that there's probably a lot more to talk about, but I don't want this to get too long. I don't want you to fall asleep. I hope this is useful to you. If anybody is, and all my clients are, wanting to start a business in Portugal, please listen to this, forward this podcast to anyone that's starting, because this way, if you get the heads up about the cultural side of things, you won't be surprised. You won't take things the wrong way when something happens, and it will be much easier for you to carry on and grow and integrate in Portugal with your business. I hope this was useful for you, and I'll see you next time.